There was a time when people knew how to endure, when strength wasn't just physical, but mental, when happiness wasn't about chasing, but about becoming. Somewhere along the way, we forgot. In a world of distractions, noise, and constant pressure to do more, achieve more, and be more, we've lost sight of something essential, the wisdom that has guided humanity for centuries. The principles that helped emperors rule, warriors persevere, and great minds thrive are still here, but we no longer hear them. Why does this matter? Because we are struggling. Anxiety is rising. People feel lost, uncertain, disconnected from themselves. We chase quick fixes, but the real answers have always been there, hidden in plain sight, in the writings of the past, in the lessons of those who came before us. Think about it. The modern world offers an illusion of control, endless choices, constant stimulation, instant gratification, and yet, deep down, something feels off. We have more information than ever, but less wisdom, more technology, but less clarity, more ambition, but less fulfillment. What if the key to living well has already been discovered? What if the greatest minds of history, philosophers, leaders, and visionaries, left behind a blueprint for a life of purpose, resilience, and peace? This isn't just about looking back, it's about looking forward, because understanding the past helps us navigate the present and shape the future. These lessons aren't abstract ideas, they are tools, sharpened by time, tested in the fires of human experience, and more relevant today than ever. This is not just history. This is about you, about how you handle setbacks, about how you find meaning, about how you build a life that is strong, fulfilling, and truly yours. The past hasn't disappeared. It's waiting for us to remember. These are 5 lessons lost to time, yet powerful enough to change your life today. Listen, reflect, and see what resonates with you. Lesson number 1, Stoicism and Resilience. Rome, 165 AD. A plague devours the empire. The streets are filled with fear, desperation. The emperor, Marcus Aurelius, does not break. He does not complain. Instead, he writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." At a time when chaos ruled, he remained unshaken. Not because he was immune to suffering, but because he knew suffering was inevitable. What mattered was how he faced it. This is the essence of Stoicism. The ability to remain steadfast in the face of adversity. The understanding that life will test you, but your response is always within your control. Centuries later, Admiral James Stockdale, a prisoner of war for over 7 years, found himself in brutal captivity. Tortured, starved, isolated. He had no control over his circumstances, but he did have control over his mind. He later said, "I never lost faith in the end of the story." This mindset kept him alive. It allowed him to endure when others broke. He embraced the same principle that Marcus Aurelius wrote about nearly 2,000 years before. Control what you can, accept what you cannot. But how does this apply to you? Every day, life throws challenges your way. Some small, some overwhelming. A setback at work, a relationship that falls apart, an unexpected crisis. The instinct is to panic, to resist, to ask, "Why is this happening to me?" But Stoicism teaches a different approach. Instead of asking, "Why me?" ask, "What can I do?" Modern psychology backs this up. Studies show that people who focus on their responses, rather than the chaos around them, experience lower stress and greater well-being. They understand a simple truth. Suffering is inevitable, but struggling against it is a choice. Marcus Aurelius knew this. James Stockdale knew this. And now, so do you. So, when life tests you, how will you respond? We've talked about resilience, about standing strong when life tests you. But strength isn't always about holding on. It's also about knowing when to let go. Lesson number 2, the Buddhist approach to suffering. If Stoicism is about mastering your response to external events, Buddhism is about mastering your attachment to them. Because often, what causes suffering isn't the event itself, it's our resistance to it. A young Steve Jobs walked the streets of India, searching for clarity, restless, uncertain, looking for something beyond success. He learned a lesson that shaped the rest of his life. You only lose what you cling to. Years later, when he was fired from Apple, the very company he built, built. This philosophy guided him. He didn't let the loss destroy him. He let go. He adapted. He returned stronger than ever. This is a core teaching of Buddhism. Suffering comes from attachment. We hold on to expectations, relationships, identities. We cling to control, to security, to things that feel permanent, but nothing truly is. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary samurai, understood this. He lived by the idea that attachment leads to suffering. In battle, in life, in every decision, he practiced detachment. This made him fearless, whether facing an opponent or an uncertain future. The modern world doesn't teach us to let go. It tells us to fight, to push, to hold on tighter. But what if the way forward isn't about control, but about surrendering to change? Think about it. What are you holding on to that's holding you back? Strength isn't always about standing firm. Sometimes it's about knowing when to release. We've talked about resilience, standing strong when life tests you. We've talked about letting go, freeing yourself from unnecessary suffering. But what's the point of it all? Why endure? Why release? What are we really striving for? Lesson number 3, Aristotle on true happiness. Today, we're told happiness comes from pleasure, more money, more status, more comfort. But over 2,000 years ago, Aristotle defined true happiness differently. He called it eudaimonia, not just feeling good, but living well. For Aristotle, happiness wasn't about fleeting pleasure. It was about purpose, about living a life of virtue, of meaning. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, understood this too. He watched people stripped of everything, yet some still held on to something unbreakable, their why. He wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." True happiness isn't about avoiding pain. It's about having a purpose strong enough to make pain worth enduring. And yet, most of us chase the wrong things. We think a new job, a bigger house, or more recognition will fulfill us. But Aristotle's wisdom and modern psychology tell us otherwise. Studies show that people who seek meaning rather than pleasure live longer, healthier, and more fulfilled lives. So ask yourself, are you chasing happiness, or are you building a life of meaning? We've talked about resilience, about letting go, about happiness. But how do you navigate life when things feel out of control, when plans fall apart, when uncertainty takes over? Lesson number 4, the art of detachment. Taoism. Taoism offers an answer. Wu Wei, the art of effortless action. A river does not force its way through the rocks. It flows around them. It doesn't resist. It moves. This is the essence of Taoism, the understanding that not everything is meant to be controlled, that life has a natural flow, and fighting against it only creates suffering. Laozi, the father of Taoism, believed that the greatest strength is found not in force, but in flexibility. A rigid tree snaps in the storm. Blade of grass bends and survives. The greatest athletes know this. The best artists, too. They lose themselves in the flow, in the moment, in the act of being. Not forcing. Think of the moments when you've been at your best, when things seemed effortless, when you weren't overthinking, weren't forcing, weren't resisting. That's Wu Wei in action. The modern world tells us to hustle, to push, to struggle. But what if the way forward isn't about control, but about trust? Trusting the process. Trusting yourself. Trusting that sometimes the best action is to stop forcing and start flowing. So what if you stopped fighting against the current and let yourself move with it? But what about action? What about building something that lasts? What about turning principles into a way of life? Lesson number 5. Discipline is freedom. The Spartan way. This is where the Spartans had it right. They lived by a simple truth. The more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle. Discipline was not a punishment. It was a path to freedom, the ability to endure now so that you could stand unshaken later. Jocko Willink, a former Navy SEAL, puts it this way: discipline equals freedom. Waking up early, controlling impulses, setting strict routines, these don't take away choices, they create them. Today, we see discipline as restriction. We think freedom is about doing whatever we want. But true freedom, the kind that lasts, is built on structure, on mastery, on doing what's hard now so life is easier later. The great minds of history knew this. Leonardo da Vinci worked tirelessly to perfect his craft. Bruce Lee believed in training his body and mind every single day. The Spartans? They prepared for battle before the war ever came. So, ask yourself, where in your life do you need more discipline? And what could you build if you had the patience, the endurance, the commitment to see it through? We've journeyed through ancient wisdom, through resilience, detachment, meaning, flow, and discipline. 5 lessons, thousands of years old, yet more relevant than ever. The world has changed, but human nature hasn't. We still face challenges, still seek purpose, still struggle to find balance. But the answers have always been there, hidden in the writings of Stoics, the teachings of Buddhists, the philosophies of Aristotle, the wisdom of Taoism, and the discipline of warriors. These aren't just ideas, they are tools. Marcus Aurelius faced chaos with composure. Steve Jobs turned failure into transformation. Laozi taught the power of effortless action. The Spartans turned struggle into strength. And Aristotle showed us that happiness isn't about fleeting pleasure, but a life of purpose. So, what does this mean for you? It means that you too have a choice to react or to respond, to cling or to let go, to chase pleasure or build purpose, to resist or to flow, to wait for motivation or to build discipline. Wisdom isn't something you read, it's something you live. So which lesson will you take forward? What will you do differently starting today? If these lessons resonated with you, keep them close, revisit them, apply them. And if you want to keep learning, subscribe, because the past still has so much to teach us.